My girlfriend kept imitating me and secretly meeting others, so I gathered proof and decided to end things. Working remotely helped me spot a pattern I had been ignoring. My girlfriend would take my thoughts and behaviors and present them to others as her own, and usually she had first disagreed with me about them. I would share an opinion. She would dismiss it with an eye roll. Then soon after I would overhear her repeating my exact words to friends or colleagues and receiving compliments for it. We watched a series on Netflix. I mentioned I enjoyed it but had issues with how it portrayed women, particularly queer women. I'm bisexual, and I try to stay mindful about such matters. She told me I was overreacting, and that was simply how Hollywood operated. The following day, she was on a phone call sharing my precise observations with her friends. The same wording, the same delivery. They praised her for being insightful. I stood in the hallway and felt insignificant. This pattern continued. A book I was reading. A professional suggestion I had tried out. A comment I made during a difficult meeting. She would challenge me privately, then echo it to others as if it were her clever insight. Sometimes it extended to abilities I actually possessed, and she did not. I have certain talents I developed through dedication. She would speak as though she had performed those tasks herself after observing me. The final incident involved a recipe I adore and had refined over years. I prepared a large portion so she could take some to her office gathering. She assured me she would boast about her skilled partner. That made me feel appreciated. During their video call, they praised her cooking skills. She smiled, accepted the compliments, and even claimed she had perfected the recipe. The most I received was a casual mention that a friend assisted with preparation. I stood in the adjacent room and felt my cheeks burn. I confronted her about what I heard. She became defensive, then insisted she had clarified the truth later, but I hadn't caught that portion. I explained it left me feeling invisible, as if parts of me were being stripped away and used like a disguise. She wept, said she despised feeling inadequate, and called herself a horrible person. She apologized, but the conversation quickly moved to her own anxieties and guilt, shifting focus away from her repeated actions toward me. After that, I overheard her doing it once more. I stayed silent because I knew it would lead to the same cycle. Then I reviewed comments on my earlier post and researched gaslighting and narcissistic behaviors. I understood the imitation was only one piece. It formed part of a larger issue. It became clear I had been deliberately manipulated. I began documenting incidents with dates and brief excerpts, so I couldn't be convinced otherwise about what occurred. I also did some discreet verification when opportunities arose. The major revelation was discovering she fabricated an urgent issue regarding my previous housing to pressure me into moving in together. I had been hesitant and wanted more time. That invented emergency pushed me to decide. It also distanced me from my social circle. Once I had the terminology, I recognized it for what it was. Smaller details fell into place afterward. She allowed me access to her computer. In her online history were searches for her former partners and women from past dating profiles, including acquaintances of mine. Conversations revealed flirtatious exchanges, where she omitted mentioning her current relationship. I discovered her attempting to reach out to a woman she had spoken with just before we started dating. That woman had blocked her and deleted much of her profiles after confronting her. Then one of my girlfriend's friends contacted me by mistake. We had met a couple of times. She and my girlfriend had actually connected on a dating app and gone on 3 outings early in my relationship. We aligned our timelines and exchanged messages. My girlfriend had shared conflicting accounts with both of us on the same days. There was even a conversation thread where I questioned why she seemed distant, and she attributed it to my overthinking while she was messaging me during her outing. I continued gathering clear records, timestamps, images, and concise quotes. I arranged an alternative living space. It was more modest and a longer commute from work, but it belonged to me and felt secure. I prepared an emergency bag and stored it in my closet. I waited for the earliest day I could finalize the new lease. When that day arrived, I sat her down at the table. I informed her it was over. She rejected every detail as I presented it, so I laid out the evidence one by one. The borrowed ideas, the claimed credit for my efforts and the meal, the invented housing emergency, the searches. The chats, the meetings, the instances where she used my affection as a tool. She went still, then switched tactics. She claimed none of it held significance, and that she had a difficult upbringing and profound self-doubt. I responded that everyone faces challenges, but they do not justify causing pain. I said she could not weaponize her past to manipulate me. I made it clear the choice was final. I said she could remain in the apartment temporarily, but there would be no further discussions. No calls, no messages, no unexpected visits. We would divide expenses until the departure date. Then I would leave. I had already completed the paperwork for the new place. The move-in date was November 1st. She attempted to debate and cry simultaneously. I kept my voice steady. I told her I would leave the keys on the counter. I took my emergency bag, my documentation folder, and my jacket. I opened the door. She was still speaking as I stepped into the corridor. Now my friends tell me I'm overreacting by choosing no contact. Am I wrong? I slept with my ex at my bachelor party, and my fiancé found out and called off our wedding. I'm 28 and engaged to Alexandra, who's 32. We've been together 4 years, and our wedding is scheduled for December 28th, since our families will already be gathered in town. She's compassionate, intelligent, and witty. Once I briefly noticed a butterfly ornament in a store, and she surprised me with it for my birthday. I felt secure with her. When we first became committed, we discussed our histories. I told her about Jade, my ex. Jade could draw attention from everyone. The connection was powerful, and I allowed that to cloud my judgment. She missed plans, overlooked important dates, and was unfaithful. I ended it, and she disappeared as if it held no importance. That stayed with me. Alexandra requested the full name. When I shared it, her expression shifted. Jade had pursued her high school boyfriend during Alexandra's freshman year of college. He attempted to return after Jade lost interest, and Alexandra rejected him. Things remained quiet for a few days. Then daily life resumed, and we avoided mentioning the name. Last weekend, my friends reserved an heirloom for my bachelor party. Claire, my closest friend, organized it. Close to midnight, she opened the door, and a group from our past social circle arrived as a surprise. I recognized faces I hadn't seen in years, and then Jade appeared. I was intoxicated but not completely out. Jade approached me directly. She laughed at all my comments and kept touching my arm. People danced in the kitchen area. Bottles covered the counters. Claire called for a toast. Jade kept her focus on me. I convinced myself I could manage a conversation, and then I followed her down the hallway. We ended up in an unused bedroom. The music vibrated through the wall. I knew her character. I knew who waited for me at home. Still, I crossed the boundary. We were intimate. It occurred quickly and seemed dreamlike. Afterward, my hands trembled. I told Jade it held no meaning and to never reach out again. She claimed she had grown and desired something genuine. I refused. She left quietly. The next morning, Claire was on the couch, still drowsy. I told her Jade needed to depart and that no one should learn about this. Claire called it a foolish final adventure and advised me to become a better spouse. I agreed and returned home with a fresh shirt and a hidden truth. The remorse came in waves. Meals had no flavor. I couldn't rest. When Alexandra noticed, I claimed I felt unwell and that she should keep some space. She visited anyway with homemade soup from her mother and checked my temperature with a gentle touch. I lied once more and said I was okay. I walked the hallway at night, brushing my teeth multiple times just to stay occupied. I placed the soup in the refrigerator and later discarded it because I couldn't bear looking at the container. Every time my phone vibrated, my stomach dropped as if I were falling. On Thursday at 9 p.m., she sent me a picture. It showed me and Jade kissing at the gathering. No message attached. My throat tightened. I called her, no response. I messaged Claire and asked if she had shared it. She replied that Alexandra deserved the truth and then stopped responding. I checked social platforms. Alexandra had announced that the wedding was canceled because the man she planned to wed wasn't the person she believed. Friends began reaching out. My phone kept ringing constantly. I told people we had an argument and were trying to resolve it. Under her announcement, she added that he knows what he did. Friday night, Jade arrived at my apartment. She said she hadn't realized Alexandra was my fiancée and that she regretted it. She tried to enter. I blocked the entrance and told her to go. She suggested we could work through it. I said there was nothing to resolve and closed the door. Saturday morning, there was a knock. Alexandra's brother, Mark, arrived with 2 of her bridesmaids. They entered carrying boxes. They didn't shout, they didn't inquire. They began packing her clothing, her books, the small plants by the window. I suggested we could discuss it. Mark said they were there for her belongings. I asked where she was. No one replied. I asked to speak with her. Mark shook his head. I asked if she would listen to me. He continued wrapping a picture frame and said there was nothing left to discuss. I followed him through each room. The silence felt heavier than any argument. When they completed the task, Mark told me to keep the ring. He said Alexandra didn't want it returned and that she would cover my portion of the canceled expenses. He said her share of the lease was settled and that I should stop trying to contact her. I asked him to let me speak with her so I could apologize at least once. He said she had all the resolution she required. They carried the final box to the exit. I stood there holding the ring in my hand with nowhere to place it. Mark said to leave her be. He didn't raise his voice. The bridesmaids passed by me, and the hallway carried the scent of fresh air and cardboard. Mark looked me in the eyes for a brief moment and then turned away. The door shut and the lock engaged. The space felt larger and more vacant at once. I placed the ring on the table and listened to the clock. I had hoped to be a devoted husband. I had one responsibility the night of the party, and I failed it. Now everyone says I earned losing her for that evening. Was I wrong? My stepson wants my money, but says he'll always hate me and cut us off. I'm 39 and have been married to Emily, 38, for 12 years. She has a son, James, 17, with his dad, Dan. Emily left Dan after he was unfaithful, and they shared custody equally. I met Emily a year later. Soon, Dan married the person from the affair, and Emily and I married as well. James never formed a connection with me. I tried too intensely at first, noticed it didn't work, and stepped back. We settled into courteous distance. Emily and I have 3 children, 10, 7, and 4. James doesn't relate to them. He isn't hostile, he simply keeps apart, and our older 2 steer clear of him when he's present. Early in our marriage, we established education savings. Last week, Emily showed James his account. I'd contributed 80% toward our 3 children. Emily would contribute 20% for them and fully fund James' account, since we were uncertain if Dan had prepared anything. The aim was to ensure James had support. He appeared relieved. He stayed the weekend at Dan's, returned, inquired about our kids' amounts, learned those were larger, and became upset. He accused me of pretending to be family while withholding support, called me uncaring, and said I never mattered to him. Emily proposed moving some funds from our youngest child's account to James and replenishing it later, but left the choice to me. I declined. James has admired his dad for years and rejected every attempt we made to connect. He refused family counseling because he said I wasn't part of his family. Before our discussion, I acknowledged my initial errors. I told Emily I recognized I had been overly eager when James was young. I also asked how the amounts became known. She said James asked if his was larger. Without considering it, she gave the actual figures. It was an offhand reply that sparked conflict. Then the 3 of us met. James didn't want to speak, but I said if he expected me to contribute more, I needed to understand his perspective and reasons. He folded his arms. Emily placed her phone screen down and said, "Let's listen to each other." The chair made a sound when he shifted. The air vent hummed. A wall clock sounded too clearly. I could see a water ring under my glass. James tapped his foot. "Begin wherever you like," I said. "Please go on. Did Dan ever commit to helping with college?" I asked. His phone screen brightened. He turned it over and said no. After the separation, Dan moved in with the other woman. James said that even prior to the split, Dan brought him to the other woman's home, so he knew that household. Emily had to adjust quickly for work and create a reliable routine. In those weeks, Dan told James that Emily would return. When I entered the picture, Dan told James I was the cause she wouldn't. He said Dan's new marriage was short-term and intended to provoke Emily, and that our wedding was me closing off any chance. Later, when James learned the real reason the relationship ended, he questioned both parents. Emily shared the facts. Dan offered a milder version and said he felt isolated and erred while Emily was assisting her parents. James decided to forgive him. James said that when Emily became pregnant with our daughter, Dan told him our baby meant his original family was finished. He used harsh language. Dan also claimed our suggestion for counseling was a scheme to have James diagnosed so we could send him away to a boarding school and enjoy our new family without him. Dan said only his side was advocating for James. James admitted he embraced that narrative. He maintained distance in our home and acted especially positive with Dan's family so Emily would notice division and leave me. As more children arrived, he felt returning was not possible. He intentionally kept apart from our kids. I asked about finances on Dan's side. James said the other woman's parents created trusts for Dan's younger sons, but not for him. Dan hadn't saved for anyone. James said he had been fine with Emily's amount until Dan informed him he was being shortchanged, so he returned to request more. I asked him directly, "If I contribute now, does that create any family bond? If not as a stepfather, can I at least serve as a reliable adult he can approach? Can he attempt to be civil with my children when present?" He said no. He said he knows we're not the bad guys he was told about, but he still holds me responsible for preventing his parents from reuniting and intends to always resent me for that. He said that once he goes to college, he'll end contact with everyone. Maybe someday he'll reconnect with his mom when he's prepared to forgive her for ending the original family, but not yet. Emily covered her face and exhaled slowly. I sat there silently. The room felt quite confined. I shared my decision. I will not contribute to his fund. Emily will continue her planned contributions and will give it to him when he turns 18. We won't force counseling on him. We won't plead with him to visit or to bond with our children. If he wants separation, he can have it. James stared at me, glanced at Emily, and said, "So that's the end?" Emily said, "That's the end for now." Now my family members are saying I'm heartless for denying his college funds. Was I wrong?